Terrans left the table. Now the galaxy fears what comes next. The silence in the Galactic Trade Consortium's grand chamber was deafening. For 3 centuries, the Terrans had sat at the outer edge of the crescent-shaped table, their voices rarely heard above the chittering of the Selenari merchants or the booming pronouncements of the Vorthak commerce lords. Today, their chairs were empty. Admiral Marcus Kane had walked out 12 hours ago, his final words still echoing in the minds of every delegate present. When you're ready to treat us as equals rather than junior partners, you know where to find us. The aftermath had been swift and brutal. Within hours, Terran ships had vanished from every major trade route. Their orbital stations had gone dark. Their colonial governors had stopped responding to consortium communications. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared. Vorthak trade. Master Grolak's massive form shifted uneasily in his chair. "This is temporary," he rumbled to the assembly. "The humans need our trade networks. They'll return when hunger forces them to." But Trade Coordinator Zixtel of the Selnari wasn't so certain. Her compound eyes studied the data streams flowing across her biodisplay. "The Terran colonies aren't starving," she clicked nervously. "If anything, their internal production has increased by 40% in the last 10 hours. The murmurs that followed were uncomfortable. The consortium had grown fat on Terran raw materials and manufactured goods, always purchased at prices that barely covered production costs. They told themselves it was fair the humans were newcomers after all. They should be grateful for inclusion. Now, with the Terrans gone, the truth was becoming clear. The consortium hadn't been doing humanity a favor. Humanity had been propping up the entire galactic economy. Terran Colonial Nexus, Kepler Station. Admiral Kane stood before the massive viewport of Kepler Station, watching the last consortium freight hauler disappear into hyperspace. The alien vessel carried a cargo hold full of nothing but empty promises and desperate pleas for renewed cooperation. "Sir," Commander Torres approached, her footsteps echoing in the observation deck. "The Vorthak have increased their offer by 300%. They're also willing to grant us voting rights on the inner circle." Kane's laugh was bitter. 300% of nothing is still nothing. "And voting rights?" He turned to face her. "They had 3 centuries to offer us that. Where was their generosity when we were bleeding in to keep their trade routes secure?" The commander's jaw tightened. She'd lost friends in the Outer Rim conflicts, Terran Marines dying to protect consortium shipping, while the aliens debated whether humans deserved hazard pay. "The hegemonies also sent envoys," Torres continued. "They're offering exclusive partnership deals, full autonomy in exchange for preferred trading status." Kane's eyes narrowed. The hegemony was the consortium's biggest rival, a collection of military-focused species that had been eyeing Terran space for decades. "And what did you tell them?" "That we'll consider all options, but we're not interested in jumping from one leash to another." "Good." Kane walked to the central console, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, showing shipping lanes, resource flows, and economic dependencies. "Show me the analysis." Torres activated her tablet and the map shifted, highlighting the economic chaos spreading across consortium space. "Shipping costs are up 400%. The Zephyrian crystal mines are operating at 12% capacity without our atmospheric processors. The Altarian agricultural worlds are reporting crop failures. Turns out they were more dependent on our fertilizer compounds than anyone realized." Kane studied the data with grim satisfaction. "How long before total collapse?" "Conservative estimate? 6 months. If panic buying continues, maybe 3. The Admiral nodded slowly. For centuries, the consortium had treated humans as expendable laborers and cannon fodder. They'd been content to let Terrans die in colonial wars while they profited from the aftermath. Now they were learning what humanity had known all along: the galaxy was more interconnected than anyone wanted to admit. "Sir," Torres hesitated, "some of the colonies are asking if we're really doing this. Complete isolation. No contact with any galactic powers." Kane's voice was steel. "We're not isolating ourselves, Commander. We're letting them isolate themselves from us. There's a difference." Consortium Emergency Session Nexus Prime. The emergency session had been called for the 5th time in 2 weeks. The consortium's ruling council was in chaos, their carefully structured hierarchy crumbling as economic reports poured in from across their territory. The Terrans have cut off all communications, reported diplomatic aide Vexithar, her crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. Our envoys aren't even being acknowledged. Prime Coordinator Jethrin, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical frame, pulsed with frustration. This is unacceptable. The humans cannot simply withdraw from galactic civilization. They can, and they have. Trade Master Grolak's voice was smaller now, less confident. Our economists are projecting complete economic collapse within 4 months if trade doesn't resume. Then we give them what they want, suggested Jelnari Coordinator Zixtel. Equal representation, fair trade terms, whatever it takes. The silence that followed was telling. Equal representation meant admitting that the consortium had been wrong for 3 centuries. Fair trade meant acknowledging that they'd been exploiting humanity's generosity. What about the hegemony? Asked Vexithar. Intelligence suggests they're already making overtures to Terran leadership. Jethrin's energy field flared. If the humans align with the hegemony, it won't just be economic collapse. It'll be war. The truth of that statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The hegemony had been contained for decades, held back by the consortium's economic superiority and the Terrans' military might. Without human support, the consortium would be defenseless. We need to make contact, Grolak said finally. Send a delegation, a real one, with full authority to negotiate. The humans won't see us, Zixtel reminded him. They've made that clear. Then we go to them, Jethrin declared. To their space. We show them we're serious about change. It was a desperate plan, but desperation had become their only option. Terran's space edge of the Helios system. The consortium delegation arrived in a convoy of 12 ships, their hulls gleaming with diplomatic markings. At the head of the formation, Prime Coordinator Jethrin's flagship, the Galactic Unity, broadcast continuous messages requesting permission to enter Terran space. For 6 hours, there was no response. Then, without warning, the space around them lit up with weapons locks. Terran ships materialized from seemingly empty space stealth technology that made the aliens' hearts race with sudden fear. The human fleet was massive, easily triple the size of the diplomatic convoy. Consortium vessels, came a cold voice over the comm. You are in violation of Terran space. State your business or be escorted out. Jethrin's energy field pulsed rapidly as he opened a channel. This is Prime Coordinator Jethrin of the Galactic Trade Consortium. I request an audience with Admiral Kane to discuss renewed cooperation between our peoples. The silence stretched for long minutes. Then, Admiral Kane is unavailable. However, I am authorized to listen to your proposal. You have 10 minutes. Jethrin felt a surge of hope. We come offering full partnership status within the consortium, equal representation, fair trade agreements, and shared governance of all major decisions. The same offer you've made 3 times in the past 2 weeks, came the reply. The answer remains the same. Humanity is not interested in returning to the consortium under any terms. Then what do you want? Jethrin's frustration finally broke through his diplomatic composure. The voice that answered was different now, older, harder. Admiral Kane himself had taken the comm. We want to be left alone, Coordinator. We want to build our own future without interference from species who spent 3 centuries treating us like indentured servants. You can't survive without the galactic economy, Jethrin protested. No species can. Kane's laugh was cold. We're not trying to survive without the galactic economy, Coordinator. We're trying to survive without you. The implication hit like a physical blow. The consortium had assumed they were the galactic economy. They'd forgotten that there were other powers, other possibilities. The hegemony has already approached us, Kane continued. So have the Independent Worlds Alliance, the Neutral Zone Collective, and a dozen other factions. It seems everyone wants to be humanity's friend now that we're not tied to your apron strings. Jethrin's energy field dimmed. You're making a mistake. The consortium has maintained galactic peace for 4 centuries. Your kind of peace, Kane's voice was bitter. The kind where humans die in your wars and thank you for the privilege. That peace is over. If you align with the hegemony, there will be war. There's already war, Coordinator. You just haven't figured out what side you're on yet. The communication cut off. Moments later, the Terran fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the consortium delegation alone in the void. Terran Command, Luna Base. The war room beneath Luna's surface buzzed with activity. Holographic displays showed fleet movements across the galaxy, trade negotiations with new partners, and the slow collapse of the consortium's economic empire. Admiral Kane stood at the center of it all, his weathered face reflecting the weight of humanity's decision. Around him, his senior staff worked with quiet efficiency, implementing plans that had been decades in the making. The hegemonies made their formal offer, reported General Hayes, sliding a data tablet across the table. Full military alliance, shared technology, and equal partnership in all territorial disputes. Kane read the proposal with careful attention. And the catch? Exclusive trade rights with human colonies and a mutual defense pact against the consortium. In other words, they want us to fight their war for them. That's how I read it. Kane set the tablet down. Same mistake as the consortium. They see us as a tool to be used, not a partner to be respected. What about the independent worlds? Asked Commander Torres. Their offer seems more reasonable. Reasonable, yes, but they're small, scattered. Aligning with them gains us friends but not security. Then what's the plan, sir? Kane walked to the main display, studying the shifting patterns of galactic politics. We continue as we are. Build our own networks, our own alliances. Let the great powers exhaust themselves trying to court us while we grow stronger. And if they try to force our hand, Kane's smile was cold. Then they'll learn why the consortium was so eager to have us as allies instead of enemies. 6 months later, consortium space. The collapse came faster than even the most pessimistic projections had predicted. The consortium's currency had lost 80% of its value. Shipping routes that had operated for centuries were abandoned. Entire worlds were in revolt, their populations demanding to know why their leaders had allowed such catastrophic dependence on a single species. On Nexus Prime, the consortium's capital, riots filled the streets. The great trading houses were bankrupt. The military was demoralized and undersupplied, and still the Terrans maintained their silence. In the ruins of the consortium's former glory, a new message began to spread through the underground networks. The humans tried to warn us. They tried to leave peacefully. We wouldn't let them. It was too late for regrets. The hegemony had begun mobilizing, their fleets moving toward the consortium space with predatory intent. Other powers were already carving up the territories they intended to claim. But the Terrans remained absent from the feeding frenzy. Their space was secure, their colonies thriving, their new alliance growing stronger by the day. They had achieved something no other species had managed in recorded history. They had walked away from the galactic power structure and made it work. Terran space. 1 year later, Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of the newly completed Titan station, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's first fully independent space city. Around him, the fruits of their isolation were evident: new technologies developed without alien interference, new colonies established without permission from galactic authorities, new alliances forged with species who had also grown tired of the old order. The consortium sent another delegation, Torres reported. This time they're offering unconditional surrender of all territorial claims in exchange for humanitarian aid. Kane considered this. The consortium was dying, their former territories carved up by the hegemony and other opportunistic powers. Their people were refugees in their own space. Send medical supplies, he said finally. Food, basic necessities. Nothing military. Sir? We're not monsters, Commander. We left the table because we refused to be treated as servants, not because we wanted to see civilizations fall. Torres nodded. And the hegemony's latest ultimatum? Kane's expression hardened. They want us to choose sides in their war with the consortium remnants. Join them or be considered hostile. Your response? We've already chosen our side. We chose humanity. Kane turned from the viewport, his eyes blazing with quiet determination. Send them our formal reply. Terra stands alone. We will defend ourselves if threatened, but we will not be drawn into another war for the benefit of alien powers. And if they attack? Kane's smile was grim. Then they'll discover why the consortium was so desperate to keep us as allies. The Hegemony Warfleet Outer System. Hegemony War Commander. Thaktor studied the Terran defense positions with professional interest. The humans had built impressive fortifications in the short time since their withdrawal from galactic politics, but they were still just one species against the might of the Hegemony. Their fleet strength? He asked his tactical officer. 1,200 ships confirmed, possibly more in reserve. Their technology appears to have advanced significantly since the consortium withdrawal. Thaktor's mandibles clicked with amusement. Desperation breeds innovation. It won't be enough. Sir, there's something else. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Terran system. Whatever they're powering, it's drawing more energy than their entire colonial network. Weapons? Unknown. The energy patterns don't match any known technology. Thaktor dismissed the concern with a wave of his primary arm. Humans are clever, but they're not miracle workers. Begin the attack. The Hegemony fleet moved in perfect formation, their ships bristling with weapons designed to crush any resistance. They had conquered dozens of species over the centuries. The Terrans would be no different. But as they crossed into the outer system, space itself seemed to come alive. Weapon platforms that had been invisible moments before opened fire with energies that defied classification. Entire sections of the void erupted in defensive fire. Ships that had appeared to be asteroids revealed themselves as camouflage fortresses. And then came the Terran fleet. They didn't emerge from hyperspace or drop out of stealth. They simply appeared, as if space itself had given birth to them. Their ships were unlike anything in the galactic database's sleek, predatory, radiating power that made the Hegemony sensors scream warnings. How many? Thaktor demanded. 2,000, 3,000. Sir, they're still appearing. Our sensors can't get an accurate count. Thaktor's confidence evaporated. Impossible. Intelligence said they had 1,200 ships maximum. Intelligence was wrong. The first exchange of fire lit up the system like a newborn star. Hegemony vessels, built to dominate conventional fleets, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered by human ships that moved like living things. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from the Terran flagship. Put it through. Admiral Kane's voice filled the bridge, calm and cold. War Commander Thaktor, you have entered Terran space with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw your forces and return to Hegemony territory. I have a fleet of 8,000 ships, human. You had a fleet of 8,000 ships, Kane interrupted. Current count shows 6,200 operational vessels. Shall we continue this conversation, or would you prefer to discuss terms of withdrawal? Thaktor checked his tactical display and felt his blood freeze. In the first exchange, he'd lost nearly 2,000 ships. The Terran losses? 0. This is impossible, he whispered. This is what happens when you underestimate a species that's been preparing for war for 3 centuries, Kane replied. We didn't leave the consortium because we were weak, War Commander. We left because we were tired of pretending to be. Aftermath. The Hegemony fleet retreated in disorder, their invasion force shattered by a display of power that shocked the galaxy. Within hours, the footage was being broadcast across every inhabited system, human ships moving through space like sharks through water, their weapons reducing Hegemony dreadnoughts to scrap metal. The message was clear. Terra would not be conquered. Terra would not be coerced. Terra stood alone, and it was strong enough to remain that way. In the months that followed, the galactic political landscape shifted dramatically. The consortium's remnants petitioned to join the Terran sphere of influence. The Hegemony, bloodied and humiliated, withdrew to their core systems. Dozens of smaller powers sought alliance with humanity, not as the dominant partner, but as equals. Admiral Kane stood once again on the observation deck of Titan Station, watching the stars. But now those stars held a different meaning. They were no longer distant lights ruled by alien powers. They were destinations, possibilities, futures that humanity would shape on its own terms. The diplomatic corps wants to know how we should respond to all the alliance requests, Torres reported. Kane considered the question. We evaluate each one carefully. We make alliances with those who respect our sovereignty and share our values. But we never forget the lesson of the consortium the moment we become dependent on others. We lose our freedom to choose our own path. And if they try to force us back to the table? Kane's smile was sharp. Then we remind them why we left in the first place. In the end, the galaxy had learned a hard truth. Terrans had never needed the table. The table had needed them. And now that they were gone, the universe would have to learn to function without them or earn the right to stand beside them as equals. The stars belong to humanity now, and humanity would never kneel again. Epilogue 5 years later. The new Terran alliance encompassed 47 species across 12 sectors. Unlike the old consortium, it was built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Trade was fair, conflicts were resolved through dialogue, and no species was considered expendable. Admiral Kane, now bearing the title of First Admiral of the Alliance, stood before the assembled delegates in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. The hall was full of beings who had learned the lesson the consortium had refused to accept, that strength came not from dominance, but from unity freely chosen. 5 years ago, Kane began, humanity walked away from a table where we were not welcome as equals. Today we offer seats at a new table, one where every voice matters, where every species is valued, and where the strong protect the weak rather than exploit them. The applause was thunderous, coming from beings who had found in humanity what they had never found in the old galactic order, true partnership. But even as they celebrated, Kane's eyes held a note of warning. The hegemonies still lurked in the outer systems. The consortium survivors still schemed to reclaim their lost power. And somewhere in the void, new threats were always emerging. The Terrans had left the old table, but they had not left the game. They had simply changed the rules, and they would enforce those rules with the same quiet determination that had won them their freedom. After all, some lessons needed to be taught more than once. The galaxy would learn, or it would burn. The choice, as always, was theirs.